Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Planning and Development Committee meeting for September the 10th, 2018. All members of committee are present this evening. And if I could remind everybody to please put your cellular devices on an inaudible mode so they don't disturb tonight's meeting, and to remind members of council and members of committee if you could put your cellular devices on mute and try to refrain from sending text messages and whatnot throughout the meeting. There are a number of changes to the agenda this evening, and I'll go through them with you. The following item was added on the agenda. It's the minutes from the Brampton Heritage Board on August the 21st, 2018. The following delegation has been added related to that committee. It's a delegation that will number 5.3. It's on item 10.6, the recommendation of the Heritage Board 065-2018, alterations within the Village of Churchville Heritage Conservation District. The following attachments for item 7.1, the amendments to the building bylaw, have been handed out and are before you. It's Schedule A1, Bylaw 387-2006, classes of permits, permit fees and refunds. Schedule A2, Bylaw 387-2006, classes of permits, fees, and refunds. And Schedule B, Bylaw 387, plan specifications, documents, and forms. Item 4.2 is a report from Kevin Freeman, Development Planner. It's an application to amend the zoning bylaw, Corsiac Urban Planning, Mattamy Homes. There is a replacement page, number 4.2-8, Appendix 2. And again, it's before you this evening. On item 7.10, we have 3 added delegations on that item, which we will deal with when we get to item 7.10 this evening. The first one is Sunny Dillon. The second is Jotvinder Sodhi. And the third is Ajit Singh Bawa. And the final report is from Stephen Dykstra, Development Planner. And maybe the clerk can help me what number that is, because it's not identified on the sheet. It's the application to amend the official plan, zoning bylaw, and proposed draft plan of subdivision 4X developments. Or is that simply?
That's item 710.
That's item 710 as well. And the correspondence from Scott Snyder.
Oh, I'm sorry. Through me, Madam Chair, it's item 4.5.
I'm sorry. Okay. Item 4.5 was the last one, which is the report from Stephen Dykstra. It's added correspondence from Scott Snyder. Is that correct? Okay. Thank you. Are there any other changes to the agenda this evening? Seeing none, would someone like to move approval of the agenda? Councillor Palashi, all those in favor, that's carried. Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act this evening? Seeing none. Consent agenda. There's a number of items listed under consent. Are there any changes to that? Seeing none, would someone like to move consent? Councillor Miles, all those in favor, that's carried. We're now at the point of the agenda where we move to the statutory public meeting reports. This is a public meeting of the Planning and Development Committee held in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act of Ontario. The proposals to be heard at this public meeting are the result of applications made under the Planning Act. These are not proposals of the City of Brampton unless they are specifically identified as city-initiated proposals. The intent of this public meeting is to hear submissions from the applicant and the public regarding these proposals. Members of the committee may ask questions of clarification only, but will not engage in debate on the proposal at this time. Committee consideration of the proposal will occur at a future meeting when planning staff bring forward the final recommendation report on each proposal. The city also has posted to its website at www.brampton.ca supporting information and documentation for all of these current development applications for public review and reference. If you are here this evening in regards to an application to amend the zoning bylaw by the City of Brampton Public Works Department in care of Metrolinx for the property located at 7324 Kennedy Road. It was file number T01E12-002. I'd like to advise you that Metrolinx has chosen to withdraw their zoning bylaw amendment application to this development project. City staff understands that Metrolinx will instead proceed with the project under their Crown Agency authority, which does not require them to follow the Planning Act requirements. Therefore, the statutory public meeting for this specific rezoning application has been canceled, and there will be no further discussion on this matter at tonight's meeting. Notification of the cancellation was distributed by mail to all properties within 240 meters of the subject site and through an advertisement in the Brampton Guardian. So we'll now proceed to consider the items on this evening's statutory public meeting agenda. And the first item is item 4.1. It's an application to amend the zoning bylaw to permit a commercial development consisting of 4 new commercial buildings and an existing heritage building. The applicant is Candevcon Limited on behalf of Arcadium Holdings. The location is 6461 Mayfield Road in Ward 10. Is there anybody here this evening who wishes to hear a submission from the applicant and a presentation from city staff regarding this proposal? Just wave your hand in the air if you're here for that this evening. Did you wish to see a presentation on that?
I'd like to get some further information. I live at the corner of Doorway Drive and Mayfield on the west side.
Okay. Do you wish to see a presentation on this item this evening? I'm gathering, since you have a question on the application, that we'll leave it as an active file, and we'll move through the agenda so that you can ask your questions, okay? So we'll come back to that item when we go through all of the public items to see who is here for those this evening, okay? The next item is item 4.2. It's an application to amend the zoning bylaw to permit a residential townhouse development consisting of 42 rear lane townhouse units. It's Corsiac Urban Planning on behalf of Mattamy Homes. It's north of Sandalwood, east side of Veterans Drive in Ward 6. Is anybody here for that application this evening? Anybody here for that application this evening that may wish to see a presentation? Seeing none, then I will ask if you'll have to forgive me, we have to go through a new process for hearing these statutory public meetings this evening. So if nobody's here from the public, then I will ask if the applicant would like to make a presentation on this evening. No, thank you. So let the record show that no one in attending this statutory public meeting requested an applicant's submission, staff presentation, or requested to speak on this matter, and the applicant has declined the opportunity to make a submission to committee on this matter. Do any members of council have questions of city staff for clarification only regarding this application? Councillor Paleshi, do you have a question of staff for clarification only? Thank you.
Just waiting for my mic, Madam Chair. It's more along the lines of the process, and I don't know if you can answer it because it is new to us, but to staff. And I realize we have to ask the applicant if they want to make a presentation, but what are the benefits, or are there any repercussions that could come back to the application if they do not make a presentation for the public? Turning to the lawyer.
Turning to the lawyer, who's not Dennis Squires, so maybe you could
No.
introduce yourself for the record. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, my name is Andrea Wilson-Peebles. I've been with the city since January. and I'm here for Dennis, Mr. Squires. The opportunity to make a presentation to council or the public is solely at the applicant's cost, and the reason that we now ask the chair to confirm that they don't wish to do so is that any suggestion that the city prevented them or didn't give them the opportunity to make a presentation would be harmful to us, but they are completely at their discretion to waive that.
So I understand that part of it. I'm just more concerned that if a resident came sometime in the future and started complaining that the applicant did not make a presentation to the public, can the applicant be not held liable, but could that go against the applicant if they did not make a presentation in the future? That's kind of my question.
Through you, Madam Chair, I've never heard of anything like that in my experience.
But it's a new process, so I'm just wondering if further down the road, if something was to come up, maybe if we could take a deeper dive into that and look at, the potential for, I just don't want in the future something to happen where the applicant was given the opportunity to make a presentation, but, we can't predict the future, and it is a new process again, but I just wonder if there could be issues with that sometime in the future.
Through you, Madam Chair, certainly we can
Take
report
that under
back.
advisement? Okay,
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
okay, thank you. Councillor Pelleggi, would you like to move a
Happy
motion
to.
to approve the staff report? All those in favor? All those in favor? That's carried, thank you. We can now adjourn that item for this evening. The next item is 4.3. It is an application to amend the zoning bylaw to permit a dental office. The applicant / owner is Glenn Schnarr and Associates Incorporated on behalf of Lisa Savage. The address is 3024 Countryside Drive in Ward 10. Is there anybody here this evening who wishes to see a presentation on this item? Seeing none. Let the record show that no one attending the statutory public meeting requested an applicant submission, staff presentation, or requested to speak on this matter. Does the applicant wish to make a submission to committee on this proposal? No, thank you. Let the record show that the applicant declined the opportunity to make a submission to committee on this matter. Does any member of council or of committee have questions of city staff for clarification only on the proposal? Seeing none, Councillor Dillon, as one of the area councillors, would you like to approve the staff report? All those in favor? That's carried. The next item is item 4.4. It's an application to amend the zoning bylaw and proposed draft plan of subdivision to permit 8 lots for single detached dwellings. The applicant is Great Gulf Toronto 2000 Incorporated on behalf of 2604666 Ontario Incorporated. It's on the east side of Heritage Road, midway between Embleton Road and Lionhead Golf Club in Ward 6. Is anybody here this evening who wishes to hear a submission from the applicant and a presentation from city staff regarding this proposal? Just wave your hand in the air. Seeing nobody, let the record show that no one attending this statutory public meeting requested an applicant submission, staff presentation, or requested to speak on this matter. Does the applicant wish to make a submission to committee on the proposal? No, thank you. Let the record show that the applicant has declined the opportunity to make a submission to committee on this matter. Do any members of committee have questions of staff for clarification on this proposal? Seeing none, would one of the area councillors, it's over here. I'm looking over here thinking it's Councillors Bowman or Madeira. Councillor Willens is moving a motion to approve the staff report. All those in favor? That's carried. The next item is our item 4.5. It's an application to amend the official plan zoning bylaw and proposed draft plan of subdivision to remove the subject lands from the Huttonville North Secondary Plan Area 52 and add it to the Huttonville Secondary Plan 29B to facilitate a proposed residential development consisting of 52 single detached dwelling lots. The applicant is KLM Planning Partners on behalf of 4X Developments Incorporated, and it's located north of Embleton Road between Heritage Road and Mississauga Road in Ward 6. Is anyone here this evening who wishes to hear a submission from the applicant and presentation from city staff regarding this proposal? Does anybody wish to see a presentation from the applicant and city staff? Seeing none, let the record show that no one attending this statutory public meeting requested an applicant submission, staff presentation, or requested to speak on this matter. Does the applicant wish to make submission to committee on the proposal? Thank you. Let the record show that the applicant declined the opportunity to make a submission to committee on this matter. Do any members of committee have questions of city staff for clarification only regarding the proposal? Seeing none, then I'm looking for a motion to approve the staff report. Councillor Paletti, all those in favor? That's carried. Item 4 point, sorry? Oh, well, okay. Councillor Paletti's moved the correspondence that was added out from Turkstra on that as well. All those in favor of receiving the report? Thank you. Item 4.6 is a report, an application to amend the official plan and zoning bylaw to permit the development of 2 single detached dwellings. The applicant owner is Candevcon Limited on behalf of 102 78726 Canada Incorporated. The location is 10612 Goreway Drive in Ward 10. Is there anybody here this evening that wishes to see an applicant presentation and staff presentation on this application? Seeing none, then let the record show that no one attending this statutory public meeting requested an applicant's submission, staff presentation, or requested to speak on the matter. Does the applicant wish to make a submission to committee on the proposal? Thank you. Then let the record show that the applicant declined the opportunity to make a submission to committee on this matter. Do any members of committee have questions of city staff for clarification only on this application? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion from a councillor to approve the staff report. Councillor Spovieri? All those in favor? That is carried. We'll now go back to item 4.1. It was the application to amend the official plan and zoning bylaw. I understand we have a gentleman who has a question on this. Do you wish to see a presentation from staff or the applicant? You just have a question? Then perhaps I can ask you to come forward. We do have somebody that will ask you to sign in, but we can get you to do that afterwards.
Okay.
If you'd like to state your name for the public record, and
Good.
you'll have 5 minutes to speak.
Okay, my
Okay.
name is Gano Chatterpal. I'm living at the corner of Goreway Drive and Mayfield on the on the east side, just opposite where the development will be going.
Perhaps we can get the map.
The
up
concern
on
that we have in that side of the subdivision is that I've heard from other neighbors, and we are all on the septic system. We don't have sewers, and these developments are going all around us. Everybody else is getting sewers. And on this side of the road where it's called estate lots, we're stuck with septic, and our taxes keep going up there. So, like my particular not concern, but interest is that seeing that development is going right opposite the road from where I'm living in a nice, quiet residential area. That area will be commercial. I'd like to somehow get sewers, at least a sewer connection to my property, because it's not fair that every area around me is getting it and we're not getting it. And so, as this development is going up, it will affect, you know, my piece because, you know, it's right opposite me. Right now, there's a mailbox at the end of my street, and I know what it's like to have people go pick up their mail, and they turn in my driveway, about, you know, 10 to 15 cars a day, come in, turn in the driveway. Sometimes they go right around, make a loop in my driveway because I have a circle in the middle. There are no cars parked there. But I guess that's life. But here's an opportunity for me to be able to tap in, and, you know, the sewers are going right across the street from me. Why can't I get connected to the sewers there? So I don't know.
I'm going to ask the director to respond to your question and perhaps give you some advice on how you might get that question answered.
Okay, well,
Certainly.
thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, if I could obtain the gentleman's information and contact information, what I can do is connect this individual with the Region of Peel staff. The water and sewer system is run through the Region of Peel. And typically in this kind of situation, they would ask that a petition be collected through the neighboring
Yeah, and
landowners.
I am prepared to do that because I have a lot of family members too that live in that area. And neighbors have spoken, they would like to get the sewers because a septic system, like, you go through a lot of, like, I just upgraded my septic last year. I spent about over $30,000, and you gotta constantly maintain it. And, you know, especially with heavy rainfall, the more water that gets into the septic, the more you have to maintain. So it's a huge cost, and then my taxes went up $5,000. Like, I'm paying $18,000, and it might be going up. Some of the houses there are paying like $20-something thousand in taxes, and it's just, you know, we're seeing that it's really unfair that we don't have sewers.
We can connect you with the
Okay, well,
folks at
thank
the
you. I'd love
region
I will
to
collect your
start the
information.
process.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Are there any other individuals in attendance this evening that wish to speak on this? If not, then I will record gentleman's name. I do have to give the applicant an opportunity to make a presentation if they wish to this evening. Does the applicant wish to make a presentation?
If there's no one who would like to see one, I'm okay.
Okay, thank you. Let the record show that the applicant declined the opportunity to make a submission to committee on the matter. Do any members of committee have questions of clarification for staff on this application? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion to approve the staff report. Would one of the area councillors like to move that? One of the area councillors that shouldn't be on their technology this evening? Councillor Sprovieri, would you like to move the report for approval? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. I think we covered it all off there, Madam Clerk. Okay. What we do now, under the new proposal, that's why I get a book to read for the public meeting parts now. Okay, committee, we will now move to the delegations. And the first is a possible delegation for item 7.1, the proposed amendments to Building Bylaw 387, 2006. Is anybody in attendance this evening on that report? You are there. Okay. So, I see you waving. So, Madam Clerk, we'll bring forward item 7.1, and we will hear the delegations on that and then receive them. Okay. So if you'd like to sign in somewhere, where she's gone, where's Risha gone? Where's the sign-in sheet? Is it over at the far side? Okay, anybody who wishes to speak on this item, if you could sign in and then come to the podium and state your name for the sorry? We're on 7.1. Well, we're actually on 5.1 related to item 7.1, so we'll bring 7.1 forward and deal with it at the time that we hear these delegations. Could you state your name? You can come forward now.
I can come.
And if you could state your name for the public record,
My name is Jatwinder Sodhi.
and you know the rules, you have 5 minutes to speak on the report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair and the council members, thank you very much for reminding the time, clock time. But we are here today to thank the staff for the wonderful job they have done. They have considered the residents, the taxpayers of that particular subdivision in their decision making, and we're looking forward that council is also positive to have that bigger plaza, which will attract a little bit more employment, especially when Brampton has only 21% employment and 79% residential land, which is a huge mismatch. It might take 0.002% add up for employment if it's a bigger plaza and it has a attraction of a big box stores. That will add up for the residents to do the shopping, less congestion, driving around the area. It will help the Caledon side too, because Mayfield is one of the busiest roads right now, and that spot will be the good spot. And there is no good plaza in that proximity for the residents, for other subdivisions around that area too.
Mr. Sodi,
Yes, please.
we're currently on item 7.1, and I believe you're speaking on 7.10.
Then we can take our words back and come back. Not a problem.
That's a very clever way to double the time that you get at the microphone, you know that, eh? So,
I was asked to come here anyway.
that's,
Thank you.
and we
We'll
understand.
come back.
We will come back
But-
to 7.10.
Thank you. Thank you. Maybe delete that.
So the other gentleman that signed in, are you here for 7.10 or 7.1? 7.10. They were here for 7.10 as well, okay. So the first report is 7.1. It was related to item 5.1 is the delegation number. It relates to item 7.1. Is anybody here for that? I'm seeing no. Would someone like to move item, Counselor Gibson has moved 7.1. All those in favor? That's carried. We'll move now to our second delegation item, which is a presentation by Bobby Gauthier, a project manager with WSP, regarding the comprehensive zoning bylaw review, status update, and zoning bylaw strategy report. And it's directly related to item 7.2 on your agenda this evening. So if we could bring that forward, and I'll invite Bobby up to the microphone to do the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of council, and members of the public. Good to see you. My name is Bobby Gauthier. I am a project manager with WSP, and I'm here to present an update on the comprehensive zoning bylaw review. I did have a PowerPoint presentation.
Yep, we have a copy of it before us. Are we able to put it up on the screen?
Thank you.
I think the clerk's office is just finding it.
Oh, okay. I have it on a USB key, if that helps.
Do we have it here? Good. They're just queuing it up.
Okay, thank you.
There we go. It's all yours.
Perfect. So I think the The main purpose of the presentation is to provide an update on the status of the zoning bylaw review process. So I'll just take a few minutes and go over things like the timeline and the process and give you a summary of some of the work that we've done in the past year or so since I was here last. If we could scroll down to the third slide, project purpose. Thank you. So as a refresher, the purpose of the project, of course, is to produce a brand new comprehensive zoning bylaw for the city of Brampton. So we'd be looking to replace the current zoning bylaw, 270-2004, with a brand new zoning bylaw. And I think that represents an important opportunity to modernize the bylaw, make it easier to use, more user-friendly. It also, of course, represents an important opportunity to implement the city's official plan. That's a requirement of the Planning Act. So the zoning bylaw has not been comprehensively reviewed since the current official plan went into effect, and there is a need to review that document and bring it into conformity with the official plan. I also recognize, of course, that there is an official plan review going on currently at the city, and I do want to make sure that we are, as much as possible, being aligned with that official plan review. So we want to make sure that the zoning bylaw is ready for that new official plan, and I've got some points about what that means later on. If we could scroll to the next slide. Perfect. So this is a pretty major planning study. It's taking about 3 years from the initiation to completion, and we're about halfway through it at this point. So we started the project back in December of 2016. We completed a background report, and you may recall I provided a presentation to committee about a year or so ago. And since then, we've completed a whole bunch of work, hundreds of pages of analysis in the form of 8 technical papers, parking and loading study, as well as the zoning bylaw strategy report. I'll talk about those deliverables on the next few slides. So once we get through completing those documents, the next phase, phase 2, is to actually draft the zoning bylaw. And our intent will be to do that early 2019 with the objective of completing the process and bringing that forward at the end of 2019. And then after that, the final phase is implementation. So that would be, once city staff take over the bylaw and start to administer it. Next slide, please. In terms of the public consultation process, there's basically 4 key milestones in which we consult the public very directly. So the first open house we had last year, I believe it was December of 2017, we consulted on the background report, which was an analysis of the issues and the things that we needed to address in the bylaw. Our intent is to have a public open house later this year, probably late October, early November, in which we will present all the work that we've done in the past year, the zoning strategy report, and all the technical papers. And then we will conduct a series of open houses when the draft zoning bylaw is released. In my experience, interest from the public, interest from stakeholders really ramps up when you actually release the draft zoning bylaw. So our intent is to have a series of open houses across the city to consult when we actually release that zoning bylaw. But of course, we encourage written input throughout the process. We invite people to reach out and offer an invitation to meet with us, and we're happy to accept that. And then there also is a website set up, so people can find regular updates on the process and the current status of the project at brampton.ca/zoning review. Next slide. So in terms of the work that we've completed since the last time I provided a presentation to you, the first is a significant amount of work, 8 technical papers addressing a wide range of different topics. So we've drafted 8 papers that explore all these different issues. They look at, what does the zoning bylaw say about these issues? What does the official plan say? How are other municipalities dealing with these issues? And what are the general directions for updating the zoning bylaw to address these issues that we've raised? It's difficult to summarize the content of all these reports. There's a lot of different reports, and certainly I'd be happy to provide a subsequent presentation to council in the future if there is any additional questions or information required. Like I said, the intent will be to have our open house in the fall to present all of that content, which is quite quite extensive. Next slide, please. The other deliverable we've completed in draft since I was here last is the zoning strategy report. That's basically a document that brings together all of the information that we've completed so far. The background report, the technical papers, and it effectively lays out a work plan for writing the new zoning bylaw. So if you open up the report, you'll find, a whole bunch of narrative along with 21 recommendations, 21 key recommendations relating to how we're going to modernize the bylaw, how we're going to ensure that the zoning bylaw conforms to the official plan, how we're going to ensure that the zoning bylaw is ready for the new official plan, and there's a lot of recommendations around consolidating and updating all of the different zone categories as well. And I believe this report is attached to the agenda. Next slide, please. So just because this is sort of a visual aspect of the report, I thought I would share it with you as part of this presentation. So on the left is what we anticipate the new zoning bylaw looking like. So we can see the use of color, wayfinding features in the document, really modernizing it, organizing information into matrices rather than having, a wide range of different separate chapters, but bringing things together so that it's a little bit easier to use. And on the right shows what we anticipate the zoning bylaw mapping could look like. So we anticipate using color and just a more modern, contemporary approach to the visual of the mapping. That's just one visual aspect of that report that I wanted to share. Next slide, please. So our next steps. So what we'd like to do in the fall of this year, September, or actually late September, maybe October, possibly early November, date is TBD. We want to present all of that content. It is a lot of content. We want to have an open house to present all of that information. I expect to have lots of different conversations with members of the public. All kinds of different stakeholders have already reached out in this process, and looking forward to having discussions with them. And we'd be looking for input on all of that documentation by the end of 2018. And then in spring of 2019, the intent will be to release that first draft zoning bylaw. And like I said, we'll have a series of public open houses to present all of that content, because it is a lot of content. And like I said, people become much more interested when you actually release a draft bylaw and they have something more concrete to react to. Last slide, please. So I think that wraps up the presentation. I thank you very much for your time, and certainly happy to answer any questions.
Bobby, thank you very much for the presentation. I don't have any members of council on the board. I'm sorry, it just went on. Councillor Palashi.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I was expecting more councillors to be on the board, and that's why I was kind of waiting a bit, but then you jumped right into it, so.
You bring forward report 7.2?
I can bring forward report 7.2, yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. So a lot of the presentation had to do with modernizing and consolidating, and there was some recommendations in there and the process, the ongoing process. What kind of timelines or potential issues be cut because of the review, because of the new process going forward? Like we're always trying to, you hear it out there, cut the red tape, and this is a huge portion of red tape for any municipalities, and you can find it in here. And are we looking at kind of that side of it, where it's a real common sense approach to trying to get people through the process of any changes that need to be made?
Through you, Madam Chair, if I may respond. I certainly think that's part of our scope of work. I'll give you a specific example that comes to mind is when we reviewed minor variances in the city, we found that there were lots of minor variances related to permitted uses in the commercial and industrial zones. What that kind of tells me is that the list of permitted uses in your zoning bylaw is probably a little bit out of date, it probably could use some modernization, and I think that's kind of low-hanging fruit with respect to, reducing red tape or reducing obstacles for businesses to start up. So that's an example of the kind of thing that I would see us doing, for sure.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that. It's I think it's key for us to be, and not following in the footsteps of other municipalities, but leaders in something like this going forward, where we can modernize where we can and cut that tape. Another question that I had, and can you repeat what you said about the public portion side of it? And if we can go back to that slide, when does this go to the public, and how long from public consultation to kind of the end, books shut, is that timeline?
Sure. Through you, Madam Chair, if we could maybe scroll up to a previous slide. Keep going. That one there, the timeline.
Back one?
Next one.
There.
Yeah, that one right there. So in terms of consultation, so we'd like to get out to the public to present all of this background work in the fall. And then we'd have about 6 months. We expect to release the draft bylaw probably about March of 2019. And then we'd be looking to have public consultation, like I said, a series of open houses, probably in about April of 2019. So we'd give about a month before we release the documents publicly once they're completed, and I'll probably be back here to present that to you as well. Once we release the documents and have those initial open houses, we'd be looking for public comments, right through the rest of the spring into the summer, and then likely looking to complete a second draft of the zoning bylaw by about August of 2019, I would expect. And then we'd be looking to have a statutory public meeting in probably September of 2019. So there'd be about a 6-month time frame between when the document's released to when we have the statutory public meeting.
Okay. That's a good timeline. I like that length of time to be able to really look into public's comments. Going through the tables, and it was the first one that caught my eye, and intensification corridors. So there's a lot of information in here, and to the average person that is going to come to the public meetings, for myself, I wouldn't fully understand some of the comments and some of the recommendations and conclusions that are in the document. So highlighting stuff that actually affects people's lives on a day-to-day basis, like intensification corridors. One first question: who determines where those corridors are, and how do we advise the public that some of those high-level areas will affect their, to really get their comments on some of those higher issues that they may come across?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. The point's well taken. I certainly think a lot of the content will be difficult for most residents to consume it. I certainly think it's on me and it's our responsibility to make sure that we're presenting information to the public in a way that they will be able to understand, that it kind of relates to their day-to-day lives. With respect to who determines intensification corridors, that's really something addressed by the official plan. And I understand, from city staff that that's probably going to evolve through the new official plan review. So one of the recommendations of that technical paper is that, we kind of keep an eye on that and we do our best to align with it. The way I see the zoning bylaw rolling out is we'll probably have a series of different zones and standards to guide intensification. We won't necessarily change permissions for intensification through the zoning bylaw review process, but we'll certainly set out standards for it.
And it'll have that flexibility for when we're changing, growth plans, then this zoning bylaw will have that flexibility to change with those up and coming.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Absolutely. The intent will be to have, if I can kind of summarize the approach, is we'll have a series of mixed-use zones. I think there's kind of a gap in the current bylaw. There aren't a lot of standards to deal with intensification and high-density uses. So we want to have some standards built into the bylaw so that when the city does implement an intensification strategy that it's happy with in the new official plan review, the zoning bylaw will be ready for that. You know, undoubtedly though, when the new official plan review is completed, you'll have to revisit the zoning bylaw and do an amendment to it. That's just kind of the way it is.
Yep,
But as much as possible, we'll want to minimize the scope of that future amendment.
for sure. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. I see no further questions. Would you like to move receipt of the presentation and the report?
Sure.
All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was very helpful. Thank you. The next item is 7.3. It's a facade and building improvement grant application for 9 and 11 Queen Street West and 247 Main Street North, 249 Main Street North in wards 1 and 3. Councillor Paleshi.
No,
You're on.
they should take my name off the board.
There's been a request by Councillor Dillon for a recorded vote on this item. It's been moved by Councillor Gibson. All those in favor? Councillor Dillon has asked for a recorded vote. We're going to do that on the screen. Can we do that, or do you want, is it easier for you if we stand? Sorry? It's easier if we stand? All those in favor of the recommendations contained in 7.3.1?
In favor, I have Councillor Miles, Councillor Fortini, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Medeiros, Chair Moore, Councillor Sprovieri, Councillor Paleshi, Councillor Willens, and Councillor Gibson. And all those opposed, I have Councillors Dillon. And Madam Chair, the motion fails.
Thank you. The
Oh,
motion
sorry,
carries.
the motion carries
I know
on
what you,
with a vote of 9-1.
as long as you put it right in the minutes, we're good.
I beg your pardon, the motion carries.
Item 7.4 is a recommendation report to repeal the city-initiated official plan amendment, OP 2006-125. This is in Councillor Paleshi and Councillor Willens' area. Would you like to move the recommendation report? Councillor Willens has moved it. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Item 7.5 is an information report, 164, 166 Main Street North. It's an update on the grant timelines and outstanding infractions. Councillor Gibson.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to move a motion that we revoke the approvals for the program on this property, and I want to point out why. If you look in your report, you'll see that there's a letter from the applicant in here basically asking us to, dated August 20th, 2018, asking us to extend the approvals on this property. You'll notice in the letter that he's admitting that he's trying to sell the property, basically using our taxpayers' money to make the property worth more, in my opinion. The city has had to, and these are words coming from right from the report, the city has had to retain contractors on a number of occasions to have the property comply to orders. The owner of the property did not respond to those orders. The report also says that in the approval process in our grants, that a property owner must show reasonable and clear progress. Zero progress. So there's no progress at all. And I supported this at the beginning because I thought this owner had the intent and would help clean up the property that was a bad property. But I think that this owner is abusing our facade improvement grant, and I'd like to move a motion to revoke, if that's the right word, the approval of the for this grant on this property.
Okay.
Thank you.
So there's an amendment. One is that we received the report, and two is that the I'm not sure what the right language is, but that there be a repeal of the recommendation report to grant the building and facade improvement grant. Councillor Miles. Yes, we can. So even though I don't need a seconder, you want to second the motion? Okay. Is everybody clear? I'll vote on the amendment first. You have a question, Councillor Palashi?
Here's my mic there. Madam Chair, through you to the clerks, you want to repeal the grant? We're in lame duck, that's not a planning, grants fall under something else. Are we allowed to do that?
I guess legal will have to decide on that, but this was an application that the property owner made to the city. It was approved. There are conditions and criteria under which that grant must comply with. And I think Councillor Gibson outlined very clearly that the implementation guidelines for grant require that all work associated be completed within 2 years. It also allows for grants to be withdrawn if clear and reasonable progress has not been made after 1 year. So we're not doing anything outside of
And I completely agree, and I
that.
agree with what Councillor Gibson was saying, but we are in lame duck and the grant program is not in front of us.
But we're not
The
giving
facade
money, we're
program
taking
is
it
not
away.
Planning. I don't know if we can do that.
But,
Through you, Madam Chair, there's no expenditure being proposed here. It's a revocation in accordance with criteria for a program, so there is not a lame duck issue.
Okay, great,
Okay.
thanks.
all those in favor of the motion as amended? That's carried. Thank you. We'll now move to item 7.6, which is in consent. 7.7, 8, and 9 are in consent. We'll move now to item 7.10. And this is the report that we have 3 delegations registered for this evening. The first delegation has already spoken. The first delegation is Sunny Dillon. Welcome this evening. And thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chairwoman and Council. Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Sunny Dillon from the Vales of Humber Life Homeowners Association. And as you noticed at the last meeting, we provided you a petition from our residents regarding this issue. 433 of our neighbors signed on to this petition because we are very much against the reduction in size of this plaza. So the reasons that we're against it is that we feel we need a larger plaza to attract more of a variety of stores. We have some smaller ones that attract the small businesses. We need something that will attract the larger chain stores as well. And this was also a big selling point for a lot of people when they were purchasing their homes. So they feel like this being removed is a problem for them because they would like a tightly integrated gathering space for shopping, for employment, and having it tightly integrated into the community as the block plan had imagined it would be. Also, our area is very much underserved in what we do have. We have very few medical clinics, shops, daycare around us. We're very much underserved in comparison with the rest of the city. During the meeting, I had a chance to quickly review the staff report. I'd like to thank the staff for their recommendations and for listening to the residents in their request that this be denied. And I do believe that that would be the best course of action. I hope that council can support that, and will listen to both the staff report and the residents in denying this motion to shrink the plaza. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next delegation is Javinder Sodhi.
Madam Chair, thank you very much for giving an opportunity. Thank you, council members, for your time, valuable. I have a family. After work, my young kids expect me to go and spend time with them after hard work whole day, but I prefer to have some my obligation towards my area as well as Brampton entire. So that obligation I'm fulfilling today by delegating back. And last time we have delegated, we have discussed all the issues, concerns of residents, including the petition, in detail. And we are thankful for the staff for looking at this time, and they have supported the residents' prospect to have a bigger plaza where we attract more businesses better, as will help us not to drive around like other residents also in the neighborhood, and subdivision, around subdivisions will also get benefit out of it, not only the subdivision we live in, including Caledon. Also, young kids, especially going to university, going to colleges, and they need employment. And it's very unfortunate, It's very unfortunate the Brampton's employment and residential ratio is 79% residential, 21% is businesses. So it's very important to have every single inch of the land which is designated for the employment or for the business has to be dedicated to the cause, as well as wherever possible, we need to have extend that to have more land allocated for the businesses. That way residents don't need to travel around the other cities to get the employment, as well as it will reduce the accidents on the roads as to help us all. And we are thankful for the staff once again for their generously reviewing our petition, our request, and they have made a right decision. And looking forward, the council members, including Madam Chair, you will make a right decision in this case if there is a vote.
Thank you
And
very much.
thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening to everyone.
You too.
I
Thank
hope
you.
I'm soft this time.
I think between the two, you just added up to 5 minutes. You did good tonight. Our third delegation is Ajit Singh Bawa. You come forward. Welcome this evening. You have 5 minutes, Mr. Bawa.
I think I will take much less than that.
Okay.
Madam Chair, Committee of the Council, good evening, everybody. I think my colleagues, they have mentioned everything. And I just want to say, I'll say thank you very much for taking your right decisions by refusing on the basis that it does not represent a good planning. I really appreciate, and once again, we are very thankful to you for taking this decision. This will really take all those residents into confidence that you really took care of us. Secondly, I want to say, since this place is created, everybody says in general, but I will further say what is most requirement in that area. If you can also recommend offices like Ontario Services, Canada Services Office, something like a lab like a DynaCare, and in addition, if there is a small community hall where all the seniors and the local residents can take shelter, especially during the winter time when there is no place to go. If you take care of all these things, that will be really appreciated. And for this, once again, I say thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. Please, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Dillon, would you like to move receipt of the delegations this evening? All those in favor? That's carried. We're now on item 7.10, and Councillor Dillon, you have a question of staff.
Perhaps it's an unfair question, and perhaps you probably can't, maybe you can't answer it, but in terms of any type of appeal that the applicant can make, does staff feel confident if there is an appeal?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I believe that planning staff are confident. We've done a thorough analysis of the needs of the community and looked at the planning merits and taken into account the public will and wishes for the neighborhood. So I do believe that we've got a strong planning position.
Right. Second thing is, does the city have any type of able to lobby perhaps even Service Ontario or have any way to entice Dynacare to come there? Because I know the gentleman had mentioned it. Does city have any role in determining who's there?
Through you, Madam Chair. Much of the space would be leased space. We could certainly speak to the applicant and see if there's an appetite, and certainly make inquiries, but that would be about as far as we could go at the staff level.
That's it, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Dillon, would you like to move the recommendations in the report? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. The next item, the committee minutes 8.1, 2, and 3 are in consent. We now have the minutes of the Brampton Heritage Board, and we have a delegation on that this evening. William Oughtred, you're here this evening? So we'll bring forward 8.4, and William Oughtred is here. He's the president of W.E. Oughtred and Associates. And you have a question on the minutes?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, my name is Bill Oughtred. I represent the owner of this particular, I should mention that in specific, we're dealing with 7573 Creditview Road. I represent the owner of that particular property. This was an item that went through to the Heritage Committee Board back on, I believe it was August 21st, and was refused by the board. And the reason I wanted to come forward this evening just to speak to the Planning and Development Committee was, first of all, to acknowledge that my client has been ignorant to the rules of getting a heritage permit and going forward and actually building exactly in accordance with the heritage plans. In this instance, he has undertaken a number of modifications, including an increase in the floor area, a fence. He removed a heritage fence and replaced it. And there's some other modifications, some minor modifications in the elevations that he is now aware of, and essentially acknowledges that he is erred by not building exactly in accordance with the plans within the heritage permit. So the reason I'm here tonight is after speaking with heritage staff, I understand there is an opportunity to either potentially defer this particular item, and I'm not sure of the exact protocol, but either to defer or at least for the planning committee not to receive this particular item. And the reason I'm requesting this is the owner would like to rectify these issues with heritage staff, meet with heritage staff himself. I've also advised him that he needs to get a heritage consultant so that the heritage consultant can coordinate what needs to be done to satisfy both the staff and to do the changes on the actual building in order to try and rectify the situation. And lastly, we do have an issue pertaining to the square footage. What has been built over and above what was approved is over 400 square foot larger. So that is probably the largest issue here. So we have to either look at taking a portion of that addition away or going through committee of adjustment for a minor variance. I know I've spoken with the staff about it, and I understand their concerns, but what I ask for tonight is simply an opportunity to defer this matter so it does not proceed through to council on Wednesday, and give us the opportunity to work with staff in order to rectify these issues. I'd be happy to go over any other of the particulars as far as what was done and what was actually built over and above what was approved by Heritage in their permit that was issued in 2017. I'm not sure if that's really necessary, but as I said, I'm just looking for the opportunity to see what can be done to put this matter off for the interim for us to work with staff. Thank you.
Okay. I would need a member of council that would be prepared to move that motion. Councillor Dillon, perhaps I could ask you to shut your microphone off. Thank you. And you're on the board, but I don't think you're on the board. Okay. Thank you. So you've made a request that the minutes of the Heritage Board be referred to staff for further review and consideration. Councillor Gibson.
What was approved and what was built. Today's staff showed chair and vice chair at pre-agenda what was done. Is there any way, Alan, you could put that up on the board so the rest of the council committee can see?
Are the appropriate staff here that can speak to this request this evening? And do we have any
Through you, Madam Chair,
information that can be put?
given a minute or two, we can get up the approval drawings versus the actual constructed drawings. We'll just need a minute to organize that.
Yes,
Because I think
what I'm trying to point out here is what we saw today wasn't, to me, and I think the chair, wasn't just a, whoops, I built a little bit more type of scenario. It was all due respect to your client, a total bastardization of the permit process. When you've got a permit to do something, you do something much bigger, and my estimation, get caught at it. I think it's important that before we make a decision on whether or not we should refer this or not, that the rest of the committee get to see what actually transpired. And I don't know, but perhaps the Heritage Board did get to see that, and that's why they are doing what they did.
So the recommendation that is actually in the Heritage Board's minutes is on page 14 of 21 for members of committee's information, if you wanted to turn to that page. If you just bear with us until we get the okay, looks like we've got it. Is it possible to move it up? Okay. Staff want to take us through these? Who's going to take us through?
Madam Chair, this, what's on the screen now is what was approved in 2017 for construction by both the Heritage Board and the Building Division. So primarily, it's an addition onto the rear of the building with a bit of a wraparound porch around the front. Okay, and we'll bring up the drawings for the as-built. So try that. Get to the email. That's this one. Okay. Through you, Madam Chair, this is this represents the actual as-constructed plans, which you can see highlighted in red. Has a significant addition outside of what was originally approved in 2017. In addition, the wraparound porch has been slightly extended, and there's been an addition of a porch to the rear of the property as well. So, but I think of the most concern at the moment, and I don't want to speak on Heritage staff's behalf, but the actual square footage relates to that addition which has been highlighted in red.
There was also a rendering, if I may, that showed, because the addition is not supposed to be seen by the frontage. And there's a rendering that showed just how much of this you can see from the frontage. Is there an opportunity to show that? Sorry to put staff in that position, but we just, Chair and Vice Chair and I just saw this today ourselves. So you can see clearly there that addition is way too big compared to what was supposed to be approved. To me, that's not a mishap. That's a purposely gone away from what permits were allowed to be built. So I won't support an extension.
Okay. I see no other speakers on the board. I'm going to take that as there isn't a willingness around the board to honor your request this evening, Mr. Oatred. These minutes will go to council on Wednesday if you wish to redelegate at that point. That's certainly your prerogative. Councillor Pelletier, you're back on the board.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no questions of the delegation, but I do have some questions of staff.
Okay, would you like to move receipt of the delegation?
Happy to.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Pelletier, I'll let you ask your questions of staff now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pascal, just in next steps, what are those next steps if council today denies, moves the motion that was written?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I'm just going to present myself, Pascal Doucet, Heritage Planner, and I'm also the author of the report that was presented at the Brampton Heritage Board on August 21st. Sorry. So the next step would be to work with legal and building to see any enforcement being done to rectify the situation. And the deferral was not contemplated before, so when we received the application, we were asked to present it at the next available Brampton Heritage Board meeting, as we did.
So there's no willingness on staff's part to, to defer and have a discussion with the applicant to see if we can move the way we really want to move them. I see legals twitching.
Through you, Madam Chair, I would want to confirm the timeline in terms of appeal. However, the opportunity for deferral was not presented as an option to Heritage staff before today. Again, we met with the applicant on July 20th before receiving the complete application. We expressed our concern. We mentioned that staff has not supported any variance to go beyond the 2750 square footage in Churchville, and there's other concern such as removing some heritage fabric on the house. There was a fence.
And I don't want to really get into, if we can just have legal.
Through you, Madam Chair, if our committee is considering deferring this matter, I would request that we go into camera beforehand, as there are some implications that I would like to review with you.
I'd move we go into camera. I think that we need to have advice that's subject to solicitor-client privilege.
Councillor Pelletier, I don't have a motion of deferral. You still wish to go into camera to discuss it. Are you?
I'd like to hear from legal.
Okay. We are on the home stretch of the agenda, so with indulgence, I'd like to move through the rest of the agenda so that we can finish off the items, and then we'll go in camera, and then we'll rise from in camera. Okay? So we're going to hold that item in abeyance until we complete the agenda. Yes, Councillor Gibson.
You consider, you said, going to camera. I'd like to know why. There's no motion on the floor to defer this. If there was, maybe you can understand. But I don't know why we're going, I don't know if we legally can go in camera if there's no motion to do something that the solicitor is concerned about.
We may rise out of in camera with a motion, Councillor Gibson, but I'll let Andrea respond.
Well, if a motion is just clearly, and I'm glad to move it, we approve the minutes of the Brampton Heritage Board. And we don't need to go on camera.
Through you, Madam Chair, my My comment was that if committee was considering a motion to defer, then I would like to provide some legal advice. If that's not the case, and you are simply forwarding on the recommendation as drafted, then I have no concerns.
Do you withdraw your request for in-camera? Okay. Councillor Palashi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question to legal. What if we essentially put forward the recommendations on the heritage permit, then what legal site do they have against the city of Brampton, if any?
I guess that's what we'd go in camera to get legal advice on.
That's kind of where I was going. So,
Through you, Madam Chair, that is another matter that would require legal advice.
thank you. I'm happy to move that we move in camera.
The request has been made. Again, I'm still gonna hold this item until we finish the agenda, and
Thank
we'll
you.
go back to it, so that we go in camera at the end of the public's reports that we have before us. 8.5 are the minutes of the Age Friendly. They are in consent. There is one referred matter item. It's 10.1. It's the status of statutory and non-statutory public meeting and trends impacting public engagement. Councillor Madera, Councillor Gibson, you're on for this item? Or you're on for the previous one, I'm sorry. Okay, Councillor Madera has moved. Okay, then we'll go back to that. You don't want to go back to the minutes of the Heritage Board? You don't want to? We've moved it to the end, so you can ask the question when we rise out of in camera. Okay, but we are right now on the referred matters, which is a report from AFAR. Well, Councillor Madeira's moved it. All those in favor? That's carried. There's a referred matters list from for Planning and Development Committee matters. It's 10.2. Are there any questions? Moved by Councillor Miles. All those in favor? That's carried. There are no items on the deferred matters, no notices of motion, no correspondence. Are there any questions from members of council? Seeing none, are there any questions from members of the public? I do, however, want to speak to those folks who have just come in, who I understand were here for item 7.7. The clerk has advised me that a number of people have showed up tonight after the item has already been received in consent and the applicant has left. So what I would say to you folks is that perhaps following tonight's meeting, if you have any specific questions on the report and the recommendations, that you could perhaps follow up with staff following the meeting tonight. Otherwise, the recommendations will be going to council on Wednesday morning as part of ratifying tonight's recommendations. So there's no opportunity for you to speak tonight on that, if that's what you were here for. Mr. Parsons.
Through you, Madam Chair, I just wanted to make available to the individuals that are interested in that item, that myself and staff can have a quick word with them and just answer any questions that they have about the item and the process.
Okay, is everybody, no, I understand you have your hand up, but we've already dealt with the item this evening because you came in after we had received it in consent and the applicant has left. So they're not here to respond, and in fairness, they should be able to be here to respond to any questions you have. But staff are agreeing to stay following the meeting tonight to answer any questions that you might have. Otherwise, it comes to council on Wednesday, so you have a second opportunity if you still wish to speak on it. Okay?
Can I hold 1 minute, please?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'll have to ask you to follow up with staff following the meeting tonight. Okay? And we'll now, Councillor Palashi has moved that we move into closed session. We'll take a 10-minute break. Yes, Councillor Gibson.
For what advice and on what subject?
To provide legal advice around the recommendation to move in camera and the implications that that could have for council in terms of appeals and other legal matters arising from the recommendation or the potential motion to move into camera.
I just
There are
want to
legal
show it on the
implications.
record that I object, and I will not be going in camera. I think we're swaying outside of what we should be doing in camera. Thank you.
I will take a vote on those in favor. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I guess we barely have quorum. All those in favor of moving in camera? Well, Councillor Palacio, we
care of.
don't have sufficient votes. All those in favor of moving in camera to receive legal advice on item 8.4 this evening, on an item contained in the agenda. Councillor Dillon, do you want to take a seat so we can? So, I'm calling a motion on all those in favor of going in camera to receive legal advice. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion to go in camera fails.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move the minutes of the Heritage Board.
Okay, and Councillor Palashi does have a question on those that he indicated prior to the decision to move a motion. Councillor Palashi, you have a question of
Thank you,
staff?
Madam Chair. On the item on the Brampton Heritage Board minutes, 12061 Huron, Ontario Street, Ward 2, the Snellgrove Baptist Church, there seems to be a lot of conditions in here that have the applicant having to come back to the Heritage Board for some specific items. Is there any way we can get rid of, having them have to come back to look at the steeple that they're going to?
What page are you on, Councillor Palashi?
5 of 21, 6 of 21,
Okay, thank
and
you.
7 of 21 are all the conditions.
Right, thank you.
And it's just, I've never seen conditions like that I know the church is in poor condition, but I also know that our heritage staff have the capability of they're certainly smart enough to know if that's the right door frame they should be using, or windows or steeple. So I just wondered why. You can't really answer that because it came out of the Heritage Board. Is the Heritage Board, well, I guess if we approve those minutes, then we're basically saying the applicant now has to go back to the Heritage Board.
Through you, Madam Chair. Regrettably, the planner assigned to that particular file isn't with us tonight. We'll have to have a look at this.
So maybe it's something I'll flag at because these minutes will go to council?
Correct. We would be prepared to speak to this for Wednesday.
So we can talk about it then? Okay.
Correct.
I still have questions on the Churchville, kind of those next steps, the process. I know that we'll, start getting our legal advice of what we should do, but what are those next steps? Do we go to the applicant, say yes, demolish what has been done?
Through you, Madam Chair, should the recommendation be approved by council as drafted, then the heritage permit will be denied and enforcement action would be examined by city staff. There are a number of different mechanisms that can be used in this regard, and staff would have to review those once they have direction from council regarding the heritage permit.
So if this happened to go kind of the same way the Monster Home went in, I think those were wards 1 and 5, what do we do then? If the applicant refuses and continues to build, then what does the city of Brampton do? Or is there an opportunity for it to go that route?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm not familiar with that matter, but certainly There are a number of tools that municipalities have under the various pieces of legislation, and there would be significant consideration of which ones to carry out. But yes, it can be a very involved process should an applicant refuse to comply and then continue to refuse to comply.
And when do we start setting fines, or do we set fines?
Through you, Madam Chair, the owner is already subject to various orders to comply, and those will be proceeded with once council has made a decision regarding the work that has been done. In terms of the exact fines, I'm not sure what those are.
Okay. Pascal or Rick, is it possible that at council this Wednesday, you could provide kind of an itemized list of some of the things that, the changes that that have to be made, and the process in making those changes?
Through you, Madam Chair, this is possible, but staff will not support GFA extending the cap because that has been carefully.
I don't know what GFA is. I don't know
Sorry,
what
the square
cap
footage of the
is.
house, the maximum allowed.
Yeah, okay. I didn't ask you if you would. But just kind of because there's a lot of other issues, right?
Through you, Madam Chair, that is correct.
There's the fence, there's the church and the steeple. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Thank you. Would someone like to move the Heritage Board minutes? Councillor Willens, all those in favor? That is carried. We're now at the end of the agenda. I do want to sort of alert members of committee that
I'd be so happy.
due to the number of applications that are in our planning department, and that we are expected that would need to go to statutory public meeting, we are looking at a meeting for November the 19th. I don't want to hear any groans about that, but the business of the city does need to grind forward, and so it's, as I understand, it's purely for the statutory public meeting portion, so applications can continue to move through the system during this period when they otherwise would be held back. So I'm just giving you all a heads up that there may be an announcement coming out. We're working with the clerk's department and through the commissioner to have that date confirmed. Okay? So hope you can make yourself available for that. And those three words we like to hear most. Motion to adjourn. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you.